How am I? I'm in an interesting stage of my life. I don't really know what I'm going through right now. I think that's the hardest part. After my 27th birthday, which was May 2nd of this year, I got overwhelmed, overworked, and lost kind of direction. It was just like scary. I didn't know. You know what I mean? I was so confused. But I do think that this is a massively pivotal moment in my life. And I wanted to do this podcast with you. Like this one. I'm not going to go on other podcasts and talk about this.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to My Social Life. I'm your host, Jacob Kelly. As always, today's podcast is powered by Surf. And this is the podcast where we teach you how to grow on social media by talking to people who have actually done it. People like Hayden Cashion, who has over 100,000 followers on his TikTok at Hayden Cashion, but also over 100,000 followers on his TikTok at Modern Marketing. You might know him by one of those two handles, or if you're an OG, you might know him as Ginger Ninja or Hayden Nar. And I could not be more excited to have him on the podcast today. Hayden, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jacob. It's an honor to do this show again. You're my favorite podcast host and one of my favorite people in the world, so I'm excited to get into it.
I appreciate that, man. You've been my favorite guest. I think I can say that. 6 times you've been on the show, 3 times as a guest, 2 times interviewing me, 1 time as like both of us. This is episode 200, and I couldn't think of anyone better to do episode 200 with, so I think we should take a moment and just appreciate this sound of silence. Did you catch the reference?
Oh, shit. Oh, no. You know what's funny? Is while you're doing that intro, the reason I was smiling so hard is because I'm like, I know he's going to ask a banger question, number 1, that I don't see coming, and I'm like so excited to hear it. So feel free.
Sound of Silence was your first album.
Yep, it was. My first and only.
Yeah. But I want to know where I want to start. I just want to know, who are you?
My name's Hayden Cashion. I'm 27 years old. I'm really into marketing. I'm really into playing golf. I'm really into personal development. I'm really into laughing and having a good time with my friends. That's kind of the top interests.
I'm glad you answered it that way, and not just like this, like because a lot of people when they hear "Who are you?" they respond with what they do.
Yeah, it's one of the things, but not everything.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm glad you answered with kind of the full spectrum of things. Mm-hmm. And for the second question, then, it's how are you, and how are you really?
How am I? I'm in an interesting stage of my life where I think when you do something for so long, for me it's been 3 years, but going really hard, at some point you hit kind of a moment of things start to feel different. And I'm going through that right now, that evolutionary change. And I'm not necessarily struggling with it, but I'm experiencing it.
Explain that distinction.
So basically, I don't really know what I'm going through right now. I think that's the hardest part is my whole life, every time, I've never had stress, I've never had anxiety, my whole life. You know, if it ever came, I could see what it was and address it and fix it. Oh, this client's causing me stress. Oh, I've been working too hard. Oh, this personal relationship is taking a lot of energy from me, and just address it. After my 27th birthday, which was May 2nd of this year, and right now it's July 28th, I think, it kind of was the moment where, and I don't think it was triggered by the fact that I turned 27. Maybe that has some psychological nuance to it. But I think it was going so hard for so long and just constantly doing more stuff, adding on more stuff. I think I got overwhelmed, overworked, and lost kind of direction. When you start to do a lot of different things, you start to not know where you're going. You're going in a lot of directions. So I think for me, it's about finding clarity of what I want out of life, what makes me happy, who I want to become. I think I've kind of crossed the chasm of, trying to get opportunities to now being overwhelmed with opportunities. And I think for me, I always want to please people. I always want to do the most. But I think now I've realized I'm at a point where I can't do everything and I can't please everyone. And so now I have to go through that evolution of kind of relearning myself.
How do you relearn yourself and figure out and find that clarity of what it is you want to be doing?
Yeah, and I hope this advice inspires everyone. Over the last 3 months, I've kind of realized that there isn't a single answer, right? And I think the thing I've struggled with the most is like every time I open up to someone and tell them about this, they try to fix it. They try to tell me advice to fix it. But I think what I've realized is it's literally a restructuring, a rebalance of my life. That's a completely individual thing. What I'm going to do to fix my life would not be what you would do to fix your life, right? And so I think the actual advice is to understand there is no answer. At least there is no immediate answer. It's very much trial and error. It's very much feeling. And it's very much leaning into, right? I think sometimes your head and heart can combat itself. And so when you feel something, you have to lean into it, even if like mentally you don't necessarily think you want to be that. And so I'm just going through an evolution, but I'm really good at looking at the micro of it and the macro of it. So the micro is some days are tougher than others. But I do see it from a macro perspective as well of like, I'm blessed to be going through this at 27, I don't have a family. I don't have a wife. I don't have, a house. I don't have all these obligations relying on me. So it kind of allows me to blow my life up and rebuild it without harming anyone. I think a lot of people might cross this chasm, in the midlife crisis to a certain extent, and it's a lot tougher to just shift things around. So I do see the blessing of this happening, and I do think that this is a massively pivotal moment in my life. I think everything I learned through this next period is going to be the foundation of kind of the person I become in the future, and learning these lessons will allow me to help so many people. And I'm really happy, to be honest, that we're doing this podcast, because there's a reason I said off air that I don't think this will be your last podcast, because I'm hoping, of course I want to talk about a lot of things, but I'm hoping today to really go deep and say something that in 3, 4, 5 years will hit someone that's watching this and make them realize they're not alone in what they're going through. But it will be 3, 4, 5 years from now, and I hope that we do another episode and I can really explain how I figured it all out. And just to cap it off, one thing that really hit me on Tuesday, I was listening to Dane Cook on Impulsive, and he said, don't be so quick to get out of your rock bottom. And it hit me because what he was saying was there's so much learnings and lessons in your rock bottom, and you're not going to be there, necessarily often in your life. So while you're there, take it for what it is. Like, don't be so quick to run away from it. Really understand it, really evolve from it, really become, more of a service to the world because of it. And so I see the macro of that. I also feel the micro of it. And it's just an evolution I'm going through.
And this hasn't been like a week. This has been months now.
Yeah, it was, to be completely honest, like what really happened was my whole life, like I said, I'd never dealt with anxiety or deep stress for a prolonged period of time. It would be a day, 2 days, whatever. And I would always just address it. But the hardest part for me with this was that I looked at all the data. My companies were doing well. My relationships were good. Opportunities were flowing. I'm looking at the numbers and I'm like, my life is kind of as good as it's ever been. Why am I feeling crippling anxiety? Why am I feeling more stressed than I've ever felt in my life? And why isn't it going away? And the scary part is I couldn't pinpoint it. And so what happens is you feel it, and I'm trying to pinpoint it, and I can't, and that causes more stress and anxiety because you're like, how do I get out of this? And you don't understand it, and it came out of nowhere. And so I think, and the reason I say I think is because I just don't know yet, but I think it does have to do something with just high levels of exhaustion. I think sometimes I wake up and it feels like it's the end of the day mentally. My brain is just fried. And so I think the first step for me was just to get to a more balanced life, to just become like baseline neutral on energy, not be drained 24/7. And that's kind of my first step. And then once I'm at a place where I can actually like think more clearly and just not have brain fog, it's really about evaluating my whole life on a happiness scale. right? And on a what legacy do I want to leave the world scale? And really understanding, okay, I have 40 opportunities, but what ones can I actually take on, and what ones actually point to what makes me happy and what I want to accomplish across my lifetime? And those are big questions, especially at 27. And so I think, like I said, a lot of people go through this in a midlife crisis when either they get completely burnt out, or one of their parents dies, or just something pivotal happens. For me, like I said, it happened to be on my 27th birthday, but that's what I'm going through.
I think one thing I want to jump back to, you talk about how you use this time to learn the lessons, and like you have the awareness to know that that's what you should do in this time, but it's like a fine line of learning the lessons and knowing you should be, and not putting pressure on yourself to learn all the lessons. Like if you're not figuring out the lessons, but putting the pressure on yourself that you need to figure all this out right now, it can only make the situation worse. So it's 100%. Balancing those two things.
Like one thing I want to test, like this is what I mean, is like it's different for everyone, right? For me, it's like one thing I want to test is going to therapy, right? But what, I go to one therapy session and I know yes or no? Like maybe you got to go to 10 of them. Maybe you got to go to 15 of them to really understand if that's a thing, right? Maybe I want to start exercising more. We don't just go to the gym once and figure it out. Maybe I need months. And so this is what I mean is like, I understand that it's an evolutionary process. And so I don't think it's going to be solved tomorrow. I think it'll be solved when it's solved. And I think that to me is hopefully the advice I give to somebody who may be going through this is like, don't expect it to be solved tomorrow. Just make a plan of all the things you think could fix and just start checking them off one by one a week, and just know that everything that you're about to learn right now, like this is stuff you're going to be able to pass on through content to the world. This is stuff you're going to be passed on to your kids. This is just going to make you a better individual. So when you're going through your everyday life, you'll have better energy with people. It's going to be amazing. And it's almost a blessing you get to go through it.
I think I'm glad you're sharing this, or I appreciate that you're sharing
of course.
this. Because I think to your point, like you're looking at the data and everything's going well.
Yeah.
Most other people, the context they have is just that data. They see the company going well. They see the TikTok going well. They see all those things. They don't necessarily see this. And it kind of makes me think of a quote you said in the last podcast, and it kind of has a very different meaning now. Yeah. You were talking about like, basically the essence was you were grinding and no one could see that. The quote was, people don't see what you do in the shadows.
No.
And I feel like the shadows today have a very different context versus 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it's like no one sees when it's 11:30 p.m. and I'm still grinding at dark at night. But I feel like the shadows now are a mental thing. And people don't see that.
100%.
So I'm glad that you're sharing, because it gives people the understanding. It gives people also like to see that you're going through that and you're successful. For people to hear that, I think it'll help a lot of people understand that it's not because they're not successful. It's not because of any given situation. It can just happen, like you said, you can't pinpoint.
100%. And I never thought I'd be this guy, right? Because like for real, I'd just been going hard for like 3-4 years. And I always used to think to myself, I'm like people will say like burnout. And I'm like, yeah, but wouldn't I have burnt out years ago? Like, does burnout take 4 years of grind to kick in? I feel like it should have been like 3-4 months. And then you'll be like, okay, like this is too much. But if your body sustains it for years, and like I said, I still am happy, but I was always happy back then too. And like, that's why like it was kind of scary. It was just like, what's happening? Like I was thinking like, do I have a medical like imbalance all of a sudden? Like it just came so out of nowhere. And I understood I had a lot on my plate, but I've always had a lot on my plate. And so it was just like scary. I didn't know. You know what I mean? I was so confused.
And hearing that you were confused, it doesn't surprise me, because I was telling you off air, I listened back to the first podcast and the 100th podcast. Yeah. And in the 100th podcast, you were talking about, I want to make sure I get it proper, what you said. Okay. You said you were training yourself mentally to become unstoppable.
Yep.
And so I think at that point, that just to me says like you never thought that this would happen.
Yeah. And what that really meant was like really not allowing external factors to mess up my mindset, right? And I think, once again, coming back to it, the thing that really happened, the reason I couldn't pinpoint the problem was because it was just exhaustion. It wasn't that there was actually something wrong. It was that my body, my energy had just drained, right? And so you can't be mentally unstoppable when you don't have any battery left, right? And what I was saying mentally unstoppable is, like I said, is like if clients give you harsh feedback, if the comment section is going off on you, if people are talking behind your back, like none of that stuff, like that's what I was thinking about, right? But I actually do think I'm mentally, unstoppable going in that direction. But what I never realized was I need a battery charge to be able to sustain mental unstoppability.
So what, like, I don't know if systems is the right word, but what are you going to kind of put in place? What are you going to learn from this that's going to help you make sure this doesn't happen again, right? Because even like going back 2 years ago, like, yes, you were grinding, but there was still maybe not as much balance, but like it wasn't out of the ordinary to see you golfing on a Tuesday night or on a Saturday morning. Like there was still like, it wasn't just all work. Like there was some things you were finding to do
100%.
outside of work.
I think like it comes down to figuring out what gives you energy, right? It's not that I actually should do less. It's that I should find what gives me energy. And I think that's kind of the process I need to go through, right? I don't necessarily think I need to work part-time. Maybe in the short term to just get the battery back up a bit. But I think for long-term sustainability, it's just self-awareness of like, if I do a podcast, like I feel like I spend 2 hours talking to someone, but then I'm like on cloud 9 for the rest of the day. And so that might be a good use of time to then recharge the battery. Maybe if I'm doing mundane work, answering emails, dealing with employees, like any of that stuff, it sucks energy from me. And then, okay, how do we build a system to remove myself? Maybe make it a Monday meeting that I tap in and oversee it, and then I leave. And once again, that's not something that you can just implement overnight. First of all, you got to become aware of it before you even start to implement it. And so it's just going to take time. That doesn't mean days won't be difficult, because it's all mental. That's the craziest part is sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, it's just in here. Like there's literally nothing going on. It's all in here, right? Yeah.
Another thing, I keep jumping back to things you said last time.
I love it. Keep going.
Because I like to kind of explore how you've grown over the last couple of years. And another thing you said last time was that you weren't good at opening up to people. But like 5-10 minutes ago, you said when you open up to people about what you're going through, so that means you've gotten better at it. Like, was that a conscious thing you did, or that just kind of naturally happened?
Yeah, like I've always been comfortable to open up to people if that's where they want to go, but I've never liked to open up to people unless they like pushed me to. A lot of times when I met people, it would almost become like I'm interviewing them. I would get to know them so well, and I would almost leave the conversation knowing like they really don't know much about me because I kind of just dove deep into them. And every time we did have a 50-50 exchange, it was because we were talking on topic about them. You know what I mean? I'd be giving, oh, well, what about this? Oh, that's interesting. That kind of makes me think. It was almost like I was just, you know what I mean? And I think that's on me. Like I didn't allow them space to ask me questions and stuff, but I'm just someone who's always trying to learn. So I want to kind of hear what you think. Forget what the question was now, but that's kind of where I would go with those. It's not that I wouldn't open up to people. It's just my style wouldn't allow them to get me to open up to them.
But with this one in specifics, like specifically, were you having conversations just naturally got to this, or when you're opening up to people, was it you bringing it to them unprompted?
Oh yeah, it was. So when this started happening, the one thing I am great at is like I'm not scared to talk about. Like I'll talk anything. It really does. Like I kind of love it. It's actually how I learn is by someone asking me a question and me working through it in my brain, right? And so what I started doing is just like any direct relationship that what I was going through affected, I would just call them and just be like, hey, like I know this is random, but I need to let you know like this is what I'm going through. I don't even understand it, but if something comes up between us and I just say like, listen, I can't right now, like I just need you to know what that means, right? And it really started with my family, like, them wanting me to come to like, a Mother's Day event or a birthday, and like, I just had to tell them what I was going through. So it's just like, hey, like if I'm just like, I just can't do it right now, they understand. Same thing with business partners, which is like, hey, like I just need you to know I'm going through this because if I just can't show up, boom. And then it happened with friends, right? Canada Day and concerts and things. Like if I tell you I just can't make it, like I don't know why I can't make it. Like I can't explain it. I just need you to know that this is kind of real right now. And even yesterday, like had a client doing something very, very cool and they wanted me there. And the day before, it was a great day. And I told them I'll be there. Yesterday, not a good day. And I kind of had to tell them like what I was going through because it was affecting the relationship, right? And I don't want to lie. I don't want to make up an excuse. And then they called me and we spent 40 minutes on the phone and they were telling me like what they've been going through. And it was creepily the same. And we friggin' had a heart to heart. You know what I mean? And so talking to people is definitely the best thing, because for me, I just feel guilty letting people down. We rescheduled this podcast, right? Because the first time we were supposed to do it, I just couldn't do it. And that's the hardest part. Throughout this whole process, I've cried 5 times. And it's when I had to let my mom down. It's when I had to let my best friend down. It's when I had to let one of my old roommates down. It's when I had to let a client down. And it's when I had to let another one of my friends down. That was literally the 5 times I've cried. And every time, like, I can't even get the words out to like tell them I can't make it. It destroys me. I don't know why. It's not that big a deal. Like, I can't make it to like a cottage weekend. Like, it's not that serious, but like literally like broke down to the point where like my friend like came over. Was like, bro, like, I'm here for you. Like, you know what I mean? I think that's the toughest part for me. And like what I've kind of realized now is like, for the short term, I'm just almost going to make no commitments, because I don't want to let people down. I want to just focus insular and figure myself out, because letting people down makes it worse. It really makes me feel guilty. And guilt is like the worst thing you can feel when your mental's there. It's just like an extra, because obviously like now you're not going to the event, but on top of it, you feel like you let someone down. And it's just like the worst feeling ever.
But I think that your ability to communicate that to people is important. And I think that a lot of people don't have that ability. They feel like they can't. And so I think that that's one thing. There's no way to spin this into a positive situation, what you're going through. But I think it's a good thing to see that like you had a friend that came over when you realized you were going through something.
Man, what I've realized is, obviously, like I said, the relationships that are being directly affected are the ones I've communicated it to. And oh my God, like I feel so much better after I talk to them. And it just reiterates like how incredible the people in my life are. Like my best friend has been my best friend since high school. And we probably see each other 3-4 times a week, like real best friends. And that one conversation, like now I know, like, even though I always thought it, like now I know, like that's a different level. That's my brother for real. And it's just like, our bond is almost like so much more special because of going through something like this together.
I just think that like there's people that go through and they don't have that. You know what I mean? Which is just like, and again, this all comes back to why sharing it is not sharing, like why talking about it is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because like one, it just helps one, like just the general people that like might hear this understand, but just sharing it directly to people helps them understand. And I think it's hard for someone on the other side to really understand unless you explain it to them.
100%. And like the reason I'm so excited about this podcast is literally because like I just want to become, a real pillar, in the world in 3 to 5 years. But I want this podcast to be able to be looked back on, because this podcast, if I'm able to do that and get the attention, will help so many people. Because like, kind of like Dane Cook said, I don't know the next time I'll be here. So like, let's try to get some good out of it.
When did you realize that you could like not turn it into content, but that you could help people with it? Because obviously when you're going through it, that's probably not your first thought.
Yeah. And like, I weirdly like want to go through it, document it, and put it out when I'm better. Because I don't even want to talk about it. Like a lot of the times, like, you talk to so many people about it, the last thing you want to do is keep talking about it, because it's almost like if it's top of mind, it's just making it worse, versus like just trying to focus on like better things and elevate. But yeah, talking about it's really the only way, for me at least, to get better. Because like I said, like on this podcast, a lot of the things I'm saying now, like I've never thought. I'm really working through it on this podcast live and just trying to provide value to people that can relate to it. Because literally the call that I was on yesterday with my client, probably talked to 30 people about this, was the first time I felt someone that I could relate to. Because they're a high achiever, multiple businesses, super successful. Our timelines are very similar. What we're feeling is very similar. And it was like scary parallel. And I told them after that call, I was like, man, like you helped me so much, because everyone I've talked to has just tried to give me advice, but they don't understand it. Because I don't live like a crazy life. I just live a very weird life. Like 27, multiple businesses, personal brand, all these different random. This is what it was too, is like my mind share is all over the map, right? A lot of people's mind share, they might have a lot on their plate, but it's only one plate. I have a lot on my plate and it's like 7 plates. And so that makes it a lot more difficult, because your mind isn't even working in a consistent manner, right? Like I'm thinking about like, okay, How's my client in Cashion marketing doing? Is this guy posting my TikToks? Oh, did this student perform in modern marketing? Oh, has this teacher been paid? Oh, is my comment section getting back to? Oh, is this on time? How's my family do? Like, it's a lot of task switching mentally. And I think that has drained me out a lot more because you just don't get momentum. You're like in and then you're out, then you're in, then you're out, then you're in, then you're out. And that's kind of what they were saying as well, is like they've taken on a lot more across their life in different aspects. And that's just like mentally drained them. And they're in a different situation. They're a little bit older than me, and you have the family situation as well. And like they were talking about the family dynamics. And once again, that's why I kind of feel blessed that I'm going through this at 27, because I can really just blow my life up and rebuild it, like, and not hurt anyone.
One thing that I've noticed about you is your processing speed is definitely above average.
Yep.
Like you're able to intake information and like spit it back out. And even like, but you just, this is off the thread you just mentioned where like you're saying things you never realized before because you're processing all of this in real time. And like you're finding those insights like just in your head by talking about it.
I'll tell you a funny moment and I'll let you finish your question. My buddy Deepak, about 10, 15 days into me experiencing this, I called him because we're working on a project together and it may affect that project. You know what I mean? But by the time I talked to him, I might have talked to 15 people already. And so I was like, hey, bro, this is what I'm going through, But look, I think I have it figured out from a plan standpoint. Need to get back to even. Need to then blow my life up, resystemize it. I'm looking at this. And I finished talking. Deepak just goes, man, this guy even crushes Burnout. And I was like, that's kind of like, it makes a lot of sense because you're right. I do have a high processing speed. I'm very good at, when I get the information, understanding what it means and trying to implement it right away. So I thought that was a funny story based on where you were going with the question.
It's very similar to Zach Honover, who I saw when I was in LA. It was part of the reason I was out there. He's the CEO of Creator Now. And I was just like, I'd watch him at like parties and stuff, and he'd be like talking to somebody. And they'd say like one thing about their business and he'd have 7 different possible solutions and this is the best one. It's like, but he just does it so naturally. And like, I noticed a similar thing about you is you're able to process things really quickly, which can be a benefit, but also can probably be part of the task switching because you can get in and out so quickly because you can process what's going on, give the answer and on to the next thing.
And my brain just goes, right? Like when you get into momentum of just problem fix. Like I find myself ending my workday and literally just like running around the house, like trying to like clean this and do this and fix this. And like, I can't stop, you know what I mean? And then what happens is like, you do that for 4 hours, then you go to bed, you wake up and your brain's never stopped. And you can even like, sometimes like you'll wake up in the night cause you're just like dreaming, but thinking. And like, it's like, that's why I think I'm just exhausted is cause like my brain just literally doesn't stop. And like, that's why like the only times I feel recharged is when I'm distracted, when I'm golfing, when I'm having a really good conversation with someone. Even like if I'm watching TV but I'm by myself, like I can't even focus on the show. I'm like thinking about a million things. And so I want to get to a place where I can quiet my mind without distraction, right? Like I don't want to have a beer to quiet my mind. You know what I mean? And so that, you know, obviously leads me to look at something like meditation. I've been practicing that a little bit and trying to get into it, but that's really the key for me is having control over my thoughts.
Sorry, I smiled when you were saying that because as you said, I don't have a beer, like to calm down. You did like a subtle wink. And I can remember having a very, very long time ago conversation with you, very specific conversation about Gary Vee doing that exact same thing.
Yep.
Like he does like a subtle wink when he's like, it's usually when he's delivering kind candor to somebody, like in a meet and greet. When he says something they don't want to hear, he kind of delivers with a half smile and a wink. And you were talking about how you picked up on that. Yep. And one thing I've noticed is you're able to you pick up on like different cadences or tendencies of people that you admire.
That work.
Yeah, that work, right? Like
I
remember
that's really good.
What?
Like that you said that. Like that you noticed that.
Yeah.
That's definitely a super strength of mine. That's why to some extent I've been really good at everything I've gotten into. Is because I watch the best and I can really pick it up quick. Like even skateboarding. Like I would watch people skateboard and I would just watch like where they'd place their feet and how they'd like shift their feet. And I'd be like, oh, like I'll just do that same thing with my feet. But it was because I could just see the subtle nuances and be like, it's that simple, right? And even watching Gary interact with fans is insights for me of like whenever I am in similar situations, how I want to be even like I think like one of the most interesting things is how he takes compliments, right? I think a lot of people struggle when someone comes up to you and is like, hey dude, oh my God, you helped me with this, or da-da-da. It's like, what do you say? Be like, yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to say, right? He always says something like, oh, thank you so much for saying that. And then might follow up with a question, right? And so I take stuff like that. And even like in comments, when people are commenting, like sending you love, if you get like 20 TikTok comments and they're all just, oh my God, thank you so much. Thank you. You don't want to just like heart every single one. Like, you want to try to make every single interaction personal. And so, yeah, I do watch Gary and understand like how he does that to make everyone feel special. The head nod, the wink is something like all that is reinforcing what you said. So like if I say something and then I'm like, it just lets you know like I double mean it. Because sometimes I think you can say something, you can read it on someone's face that they're like struggling to understand it or like struggling to agree with it. And so like it's just like kind of a kind of way of like reinforcing like, no, that's exactly what I meant.
Mm-hmm. And then like, because like they're questioning in their head, and that nod is you doubling down on it and being like, like
it's just like, because they're questioning like, is he right? And it's kind of you being like, no, I am. In like not a egregious way.
Speaking of Gary is like the most purebred of entrepreneurs that there is, obviously. Last time I talked to you on the show, you told me you weren't an entrepreneur.
Me?
Yeah. You said you don't identify as
Well, I am an entrepreneur by definition, but I don't think I am a purebred. I think I could work for a company 100%.
Because you were going to. I remember that's something you said too. Like you've also said to other places, like you started your agency not by accident, but you just kind of stumbled into it. It's not like you finished school and you're like, I'm going to start a marketing agency. Mm-hmm. It's like you were working for an agency and you were just taking some clients on the side because people wanted help, and that just snowballed.
Yep.
But it also ended up being the thing you love doing.
Yeah.
Do you think that
I don't know if it is though. Like, I love marketing. Do I love running an agency? We'll see.
Why we'll see?
Because I think this point in my life is an evaluation period. Do I want to build that, or do I want to build my personal brand, take on 3 to 5 clients personally, super high ticket, and live like a hassle-free life in the sense of like, it's me to the client. There's no employees, there's no quitting, there's no hiring, there's no system, there's no middle stuff. Like, that's what an agency is all the middle stuff, right? Do I want to take that on and then multiply that by 2 companies? We'll see.
Because that was what you told me 2 years ago. That was the next step. Was the hiring? Was the yeah? But should you see
this is why I don't have like 5 to 10 year plans though. It's because a massive opportunity came up in modern marketing, and I was like, yeah, you know what I mean? And so I didn't see that two years ago. And that's why I still don't have like a 5-10 year plan, even though actually modern marketing does have a 10-year plan, but that's because I have a partner on it. And so I can't just be ad hoc. I have to look out for their best interests as well. But I'll let you finish your question. Sorry.
Is there employees at modern marketing, or is it just the 2, you and a staff?
Yeah, we have contractors. So not employees. We have a social media manager, 2 posters. Isam has a VA. Then we obviously have 10 teachers. So even though no one's on the full-time payroll, there is probably like 15 to 20 people like involved to some extent.
There's a team behind it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big difference between Cashion marketing and modern marketing is with your agency. Last time, one thing you said, one of the things you need to work on is letting go of control of the business. I'm good at that now. You are good at that. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is it's going to be easier to do with modern marketing because you started it from day one, not in 100% control. Versus Cashion marketing, you've always been the guy in control.
Yeah. So modern marketing, one thing that me and my partner have done, and quick side kind of story, my real strength is simplifying complexity, seeing things before they're going to happen, like intuitively, right? I'm no business genius. I'm good at marketing, but I'm not a business genius at all. And the amount of things I saw coming in this company that happened exactly how I called them re-solidified to myself that I don't just think I see stuff, like I really see stuff and understand business. And so me and my partner, we're reading this book together called Start at the End. We're on the 4th chapter now. We're doing a chapter a week. And literally you read the chapter and then there's a work booklet. and we're both writing our answers, and every Monday at 11:30 a.m. we get together and we compare our answers, and then we agree on the final answers and put it in a master sheet. And basically what this book does is build your business from, you start at the end, you start at what you want to accomplish in the end. So for us, it is a sale, and you work all the way back to this current moment. So literally we're reverse engineering a 10-year plan, and understanding like, if you want to sell it for this much money, how much revenue you have to make, because this is the EBITDA on what you pull. Therefore, this is how many customers you have to serve, and these product breakdowns. These are all the different kind of business assets you need to build. This is how you then build out like your first quarter, your first year, this is then how you build out your KPIs to measure all that stuff. It literally reverses the whole thing. And the reason I was really knew this was important for modern marketing is because I have a partner. Cashion marketing, I can just kind of like have the vision in my head. But when you have a partner, you have to communicate both sides and agree. This is what I told Sam, a great thing my dad taught me. So my dad worked for Intel in the 90s. And one of the things that they had in their boardroom was a rule called disagree and commit. And it basically meant when a group decides on something, whether you agree or disagree, you have to agree to disagree and commit to the group decision. If you disagree with it, you have to commit to the group decision. And if you can't, you're removed off the project or you're fired from it's very serious. And so that's what I told Sam is like, the reason I want to do this is because I want to see where we are not aligned. And sometimes I'll have to disagree and commit. Sometimes you'll have to disagree and commit, but we'll have to come to that agreement. So then we're just fully aligned. And I even told him it doesn't matter if this book is the best book to do this. What matters is that we just have some system in place to find alignment, right? And so that's a really fun process I've been going through with him. I'm shocked, to be honest, at how aligned we are on weird things. Like the employee we're going to hire next quarter, we both said the same answer. And there probably was, first of all, we didn't necessarily have to even hire an employee. And there's probably 4 answers that we could have said. And we both said the same thing, right? And so just to have that natural kind of vision is a great sign. And then, we're finding our balance.
What would it look like if you were to try and achieve that 10-year goal in 1 year?
Impossible, to be completely honest. I'm not going to share the goal. But yeah, I don't think a company's ever grown at that rate from where we're currently at.
I asked you because I was recently watching a video. I don't know if the guy's $100 millionaire or a billionaire, but he first made $100 million by writing down in a journal how to make $100 million in 1 year from zero.
Yeah.
And then he did it. Which is why I was just curious. I'm always curious about because there's another one where it's just like, how you achieve your X amount of your goal in 6 months. And it's just like, Are you thinking big enough was the question.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could see that in certain companies that are maybe, an example would be a tech company where it's like you have the tech product and you just have to put it in the hands of more people. Like for us, for instance, to even get paid, you have to have students go through a 4-month cohort. So no matter what, we have that has to take time. It's not like you could just double your sales tomorrow in theory, right? And so, yeah, it wouldn't make sense to do it that way. But what I've really learned from this book is building business assets. That's how you get exponential growth, right? So one of the things we're building out right now is our e-commerce store. And so that's going to take a period of time to finish building it out, have it all flow seamlessly, have buy now, pay later solutions integrated, a lot of different stuff. But once that's set up, we can just run sales through it all day. And so that business asset, even though it's going to take 3 months to do, might simply 4x our sales next year because now it's built and now we can just run it, right? Understanding the process of how a student goes from first interaction to getting their diploma, really processing that and understanding and finding where to cut it out may be a 3-month process, let's say. But once that's solved, that's going to then maybe 3x our student base. And so business assets are something that this book has really made crystal clear of okay, you build them, but then that's why companies go from 100,000 to 400,000 to 1.6 to 5, right? And so that's really what this book is showing us is, okay, what are all the assets we need to build? One of the things we did is this thing called an Ansoff matrix. And basically it explains that the easiest way to make money is selling existing products to existing customers. The second easiest way is new products to existing customers. The third is existing products to new customers. And the fourth is new products to new customers, right? And so it has you organize all your strengths and all your opportunities and put them together in like a hierarchy. Okay, these are our opportunities, but if you put them against our strengths, what is kind of the easiest to achieve? And then layer them in an Ansoff metric, so then you understand what logically is going to be the easiest to just make money. And so and then that shows you what business assets you need to build in what hierarchy if you want to get revenue the quickest. And so it's a lot of these things that I'm just learning about business that is going to, paired with my intuition of how kind of humans are going to act, is going to make me a beast. But I'm learning it right now. And so for me, it's like, okay, like I'm going to learn it. I'm going to watch it happen. So maybe over the next 3 years, by the time I'm 30, I'm like, man, I'll have this business structure down, like to science.
One takeaway I'm going to have for this conversation is just the importance of systems, because you systemize everything. And systems sounds like a scary word, but it can just mean like rules in place of how you operate, like how you operate in a given situation. As long as there's rules, it can take some of like I'm a big learning about mental models right now. I don't know if you've ever looked at mental models or not.
Don't know what that means.
It's kind of just like the rules of when you get into a given situation, what are like the rules you have for yourself, so you don't have to necessarily think about a situation. Like you can't overthink it because you have the rules predefined of how you're going to operate when a certain situation happens. It's kind of like a system. And the system you build for your content that's kind of where I'm going with this. I remember you calling me and you telling me about kind of your game plan for your system for.
I told you about it before I did it.
Yeah, I think you even talked to me. You might have even like subtly mentioned it on the last podcast 2 years ago.
Wow,
creating a system. Yeah. But where you were in a very different place in terms of how you were viewing your content at that time, because you were thinking of hiring like a D-Rock. That was your thought of like having a cool day and hiring someone to follow you just for that day, which I'm sure is still on the list of things you'd like in terms of your content, but you kind of went a different, like you did that very, very briefly. I remember you did that very briefly, but then it very quickly became not following you around, coming here and batch shooting a bunch of TikTok content instead. And then taking that as like the pillar that everything else gets created off of. So I was wondering, like, I kind of just touched on a little bit, but could you explain the full scope of your content structure, or the machine behind the scenes that works to help you pump out 6 TikToks a day right now?
Basically, it can vary. But the structure is the same. And so the most common structure is every 2 weeks, someone comes to my place and we shoot 30 TikToks. Now, sometimes those TikToks I'm on a podcast and that becomes the TikToks. Sometimes it's just ideas that we have and we just shoot them. And every idea, we try to make 2, 3, 4 videos, depending on if that's possible. And so we'll do all that TikTok content. And then we'll place it, obviously, on TikTok, Reels. We did do YouTube Shorts. We did do Pinterest. We weren't seeing pickup there, but we're going to try it again. And also want to get onto Facebook Reels, start doing that. And so that was what I was doing on my personal brand back in August to start. And one of the insights on shooting podcasts is it creates your ideas for you. So we're doing this podcast right now. We're getting all the TikTok clips. But at the same time, we can then take all these ideas from my podcast, shoot one-off videos. Right? So it creates ideas without us even having to think about it. That's why I really like podcasts. And then also you're going to distribute it, which is just more exposure. So podcasts are kind of a really special way to kind of kill 3 birds with one stone. So I was doing that for my personal brand. And then what that created was a bank of all this content, right? And so we might have had 500 pieces of content from like August to, I don't know, February, March, right? And that's when we launched Modern Marketing. So what that allowed me to do is take those 500 pieces, say, hey, team, just reuse those 2 times a day. And now all that I focused on was shooting content for Modern Marketing. Now we had 8 weeks to basically sell this company and get everybody into the course to then make enough money to pay the teachers, pay all the bills that we had, and try to take it to the next level. It was like make or break 8 weeks, right? And so what we did is we shot 30 TikToks a week and posted 4 times a day. And so literally every week I shot 30 TikToks for 8 weeks. And we came up with a really cool model because I was like, with Modern Marketing, we just want to get as many views from marketers as possible. So what did I do? I looked at TikTok and I looked at the marketing hashtag and I looked for things that could be systemized from an ideation standpoint. And what I found was that videos that constantly went viral in the marketing space that was kind of basic was websites. helpful marketing websites. And so what we started with was 15 to 30 videos would be websites. Maybe like 5 of the videos would be like, 10 of them would be one from each module in the course. So there'd be something about email marketing, something about Facebook ads, something about TikTok, right? And then the final 5 would be something career related. So if you want to up your marketing career, and so that's what we started with. And then we started seeing like the websites were just over indexing. So then it became like 20 websites and it became like 25 websites, right? And then the trick became, okay, how do we pitch the website, but then push to the product? And we couldn't have too long of a push at the end because it would drop the view, right? So I would literally, this is all I would do. You can start to see in week 7, 8, all my videos are basically pitching a site and then saying, and if you want to be a better marketer, apply in our bio. Just leave it like that. It didn't hurt the kind of the virality. It also kept some mystery. Hey, I do want to be a better marketer. Apply in our bio. Like, what does that mean, right? And so then people would go to the bio. But that allowed us to then have a system of like, okay, every shoot, we just talk about a bunch of helpful websites, push to the product. We'll get tons of views, all marketers. And literally, we did 100,000 followers in 100 days. We sold enough of the program to make profit. And now we're rolling into cohort 2, most likely in January. But that's how we pulled that one off. And now what's happened, we did 4 videos a day times 8 weeks, whatever that batch is. I feel like it's like 280 videos. We now have those, and I just have a team that's reposting those. And now I'm back on my personal doing new content, right? But the good part about modern marketing is it's a straight system. It doesn't have to be me. It's not my brain. It just find a website, talk about it, right? And so that can actually be systemized. And then I want to look for a couple other pillars that can also be systemized. So maybe like something where it's like maybe we take like the best marketing quotes from like famous marketers and just run that content, right? And maybe we do like one of those ones where like the words are on the screen and it's like maybe a little story about marketers. And so I want to make modern marketing fully systemized, and then I want to focus on my personal as like my original thoughts. And so I think that's a long roundabout way of like how we're looking at modern marketing. But I want to end it off with just saying like both projects had different goals. Modern marketing was like, let's go viral as a marketing resource, whereas Hayden Cashion is, let's build fans of Hayden Cashion. So it's not about going viral. It's about putting out super deep, valuable content that comes from my insights so that the people that follow me are following me because they can't get what I'm thinking at other places. Modern marketing, anyone can go talk about websites, right? And so different goals.
One thing that's interesting to see this whole content system you have in place is I was reflecting on like past content you've done. And so you've batch shot forever. You used to, for Instagram, you'd work with a photographer and you'd batch all your photos for like 3 months. Yeah. You just carry a box. It's like still burned in my brain.
Legendary.
Switch the shirt now. Switch the shoes. Like your delivery of that line has been like burned in my brain.
So for people who don't know, back when TikTok wasn't a thing and Instagram was the thing, I would do like a day with a video or a day with a photographer, maybe like 4 hours. And what we would do is I would literally come with a tub of like 4 jeans, 6 shirts, and we'd go to like 7 locations and just shoot every outfit in like different poses and stuff and literally just have all the content for like 3-4 months.
So you've done the batching thing, but you've also done the reverse with Lazy Sundays. Lazy Sundays, you were starting from scratch on your own every single week. Yeah. And I laugh now thinking back when you where you did the first podcast, you're telling about this Lazy Sunday series where you're writing a new what was it? A new
a verse every week.
New verse every week. Yeah. And you were like, it's just so hard. You got to find a beat. You got to write the music. You got to film it. You got to edit it. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, it's cool. Not realizing I'm starting a podcast that is literally going to be the exact same thing. Yeah. For 4 years of just...
Except you don't have to even write a song. I guess you could do your research. Maybe similar.
The research sometimes would take me 10 hours.
But at least the research is like, there's a process to it. Like writing a song, some weeks you just don't know what to say. Versus like, okay, I check Facebook, I check Instagram. And it's just like, if I can't find stuff there, like it's kind of over. But like for me, it's like, I just got to figure something out here. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's no excuse really.
Yeah, but I was just laughing at like you basically gave me this big warning of like, hey, weekly content every single week where you're starting from scratch is a grind.
That's why every YouTuber burns out.
Yeah, and I was like, sick, I'm going to do that then. Like I just should have paid more attention to what you're saying with Lazy Sundays. But I think it's interesting that you've always been doing the batch shooting with Instagram. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, and like for me, it's like, okay, how do I tap into more platforms with minimizing my effort? You know, not minimizing the quality, but like, okay, how do we like, what do we want to do on Facebook Reels? What do we want to do on YouTube Shorts? How could we shoot that in a smart way that maybe kills two birds with one stone, but still makes them unique? What do I want to do on my Instagram feed? Like, what does that feed mean to me? What am I trying to accomplish with it? How do I then come up with a system? Like one of the things I think about a lot is like, I kind of want to work with a copywriter, literally have them ask me 10 questions a month on a one call. And they record me for 10 minutes answering each question. And then they come up with the stories, right? And those will be like my LinkedIns. And like, that's what I mean is like, how do I just come up with the system where like, because I don't want to take the time, you know, I want to do it as efficiently as possible, but I still want to be as special in the space. I don't just want to, you know, mail it in. Like I like, for instance, like LinkedIn stories on LinkedIn, like telling a story, powerful. For whatever reason, it goes triple deep there. And I think I have a lot of good stories to tell, but I'm not going to sit there and write an article.
Mm-hmm. It's having the awareness to know that too, right? Because not everybody has that awareness. Sometimes people think that like, well, this is what this is what Gary Vee's doing, I should do this. Or like, this is what Hayden's doing, I should do what Hayden's doing. Yeah. And I think one thing too, like with how you're doing it, how you've structured your content, what would you say to somebody who's not in your position where they could hire someone to film and edit all their stuff? Because I think...
Where they couldn't,
right? Because for you, I think you did the math on it.
It's easy. Honestly, it's like, to me, it's easy. To me, it seems easy. Like, you need to understand how much it would cost. So there's two ways to look at it. Some people want to be a full-time content creator, and therefore you got to just start hustling, making content until you can start charging brands and like doing the content creator shit. For me, I want to put out content, but that's not what I want to become. I don't want to be a content creator full-time. I want to be a business person full-time, right? And so for me, it was like, okay, say it's going to cost me $2,000 a month all in to do, you know, produce my content, have someone post it, manage it, whatever. The total cost is $2,000, right? Then it's like, okay, what service could I provide that is going to get me to $2,000, right? Does that mean I have to run Facebook ads for 3 clients? Does that mean I have to run Facebook ads for 1 client, right? How do I do that? Okay, so now this is where you get creative. There's a million ways to make that happen, but that's the system. Okay, I need a client that'll fund my content creation, right? And so now you got to go on Instagram, start DMing people. You got to start calling people that you know. You got to start putting stuff out on LinkedIn. Like, you got to do what it takes to get that client, but that can be the fund. And then what happens is your content that you now produce get you the next client and the next one, right? And so for me, I just looked at it as like, if this, TikTok investment gets me 1 client, I'm actually profitable on the actual execution. Like, I make a slight profit on it. And so that's the way I've always looked at it.
It's similar. It's not quite the same thing, but it's similar to starting at the end of figuring out what you want to achieve with it. Because to your point, a lot of creators, they start just making videos and well, someone's going to reach out to me eventually. But if you figure out where you're trying to take this, how you're trying to make your money off your content, whatever way you decide to do that.
Well, man, I think I heard Robert Kiyosaki say from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he was literally like, poor people say, I can't afford that. Rich people say, how can I afford that? Right? If you don't have the money, you just got to figure out the system to get the money, right? Rich people look at like opportunity. What could I do? Not, in my current situation, it is not possible. Therefore, it is not possible. They look at it. In my current situation, it is not possible. How could it become possible? Right? I mean, one of the things you could do, find ways to get in contact with wealthy people and be like, hey, you pay for my team for a year. This is how I'm going to monetize on the back end. And I'll give you all the profits or a portion of the profits until you're paid back. And then after you're paid back, we go whatever percentage you want to break down. Well, there's a way to just get cash, right? Just being creative. That's just different. People don't really think about that, right? So I think there's like a million ways. Maybe there's like grants you can apply for in the government. Like this is what I mean. So I don't think there's any excuse, especially because like if you really want it, you can find a couple hours and just go face to camera. Like I was saying on a podcast the other day, TikTok is the ultimate. You don't have an excuse. Literally, good content wins, and it's literally almost prefers content that's just filmed on a phone. So where's the excuse now?
There isn't one. That's the best part, and like that's the beauty of the TikTok algorithm, because now anybody can be a creator, which also means anyone can create anything, which can lead.
But anyone's been able to be a creator forever now.
True.
Now it's just actually easier to be a creator. Mm-hmm. So it's only gotten easier.
It's only gotten easier. But now that everybody can be a creator, that'll dilute the quality of the content. But with the beauty of the TikTok algorithm, it's only going to service you the best stuff.
It's merit. It's like it's a fair system. Mm-hmm. It's like we can all put our content in, and the algorithm's going to show the best. It's great.
Oh, it's great.
It's fair. And the best part is now IG Reels, Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts, Pinterest, whatever theirs is called. Snapchat has like one. And so it's not only that TikTok's here, all the channels are here. I've never seen so many people grow at such a fast rate on Instagram in so long, just through Reels. Like lots of people getting like 4,000 or 5,000 followers in like a week. That's incredible. And so that's almost the beauty of TikTok is it's forced the whole ecosystem to become more consumer centric and creator centric.
Absolutely. And I've heard you say like this moment of like discover this virality that everyone's seeing right now, the ability to grow quickly. Next, I think you said 18, 24 months is probably your prediction on how long it lasts.
Well,
So I would say with it being easier, I guess, because like the full extent of your thought there is that it'll end up being right now it's
more competitive.
More competitive.
It will always, in my opinion, the way the algorithm's structured doesn't have the same downsides as the post algorithm, where it's like when you would follow someone, the algorithm is now obligated to show you that content to some extent. Therefore, as time passes, everyone tends to follow more people over time. Therefore, the algorithm has more obligations to show you specific content. Therefore, it doesn't have as much organic reach, like it diminishes. This algorithm doesn't care about the follow button. Therefore, the more people you follow, it doesn't mean that the organic reach will decline because it doesn't have an obligation to show you it. Now, what happens, though, is more people will produce on this side, so therefore it'll be more competitive for the organic reach, but the organic reach will always be there, in my opinion. Now, the algorithm can change, sure, but in its current state, I don't see how it could change, and I don't believe it will change. There's a reason all the platforms are adapting to this. People like it more.
People, but not curious. The people like it more. But we've recently seen over the last week, like Instagram has gotten a ton of backlash for becoming too TikTok-like. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
Yeah.
So where do you think it lies in between
backlash is bullshit.
Explain.
Well, it's data. There's a reason TikTok is surpassing all these platforms, even though the backlash is that it's addictive and bad for teens. And there's all the backlash, which means like news headlines, but the data is showing that everyone loves it. So backlash is bullshit. Like just look at the data, right? Let's see if Instagram grows. If creators are now getting a lot more follows, what does that mean? Two things. People are liking this content, they're following, and the creators are liking the platform more. They're getting follows. Like it's backlash is bullshit.
I like that. That's interesting. And there's something else I was going to ask you about too with Instagram and Reels. It's Facebook fan pages. Because the first thing you ever did from a quote unquote personal branding perspective was make a Facebook fan page as an artist. It was the first thing. I mean, Instagram maybe, but like the first place you posted about it and everything was your Facebook fan page. Yeah. And now you're coming back to Facebook fan pages. Yeah. I think you only talked about this literally like 2 days ago in your
2 days ago, so I don't really know much about it. But my trainer actually has been posting on his fan page for probably a month and a half without any nobody told him to, but he's growing very quickly. And so we'll see, right? There's lots of objections of only old grandmas are on Facebook, and people don't care and whatever, but we'll see. Because it's true to some extent. It is one thing to get followers, but when you have the followers, how much exposure do you get to those followers outside of Reels? What can you actually do with them? And it's not that I'm saying good or bad. I'm just unsure right now. So we'll have to see. But the fact that Gary Vee said Facebook fan pages is his main thing a couple days ago, and YouTube Shorts is number 2 and TikTok is number 3 blew my mind. And for a guy like that to come out with a statement like that, means like everyone should at least spend some time and try it.
And I know you're not doing this to become an influencer, but the monetization on Facebook right now, from like the creator standpoint, not like brand deals, but like the TikTok Creator Fund, TikTok or Facebook's version of that, pays out way more.
Cool.
Like I was talking to a guy a couple months ago, his name's Jordan Sanford. He does like car videos, and he has 1 million followers.
Does he have long hair?
No.
Okay.
No, he's like 6'8", short hair. He's from, I can't remember.
Because I know a Jordan Sanford from here. I used to skateboard with him.
Oh, no, this guy's from the States. He does like car TikToks. He's got like 1 million followers. And he had like 1 million followers on TikTok and then 30,000 on Facebook. And his lifetime earnings from 2 months on Facebook was more than his like year plus on TikTok.
Yeah.
With 30,000 followers versus 1 million followers with more views on TikTok than Facebook. And it was like significantly
Is
higher.
it like a short-term bonus, or is that the forever structure? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure. I would imagine that's not going to last forever.
Well, no, TikTok is horrible for paying. So, like, it's not that it couldn't last forever. I'm just curious if, like, Facebook's juicing it.
I would expect them. If I were to put money on it, I would put money that they're juicing it to entice more creators to come over. Yeah. But what they really need is not just for a big creator to come over. What Facebook needs in this case is they need somebody new to start and pop off. They need their version of a Charli D'Amelio who proves it's possible to go from zero to being something and making a ton of money, because that makes it attractive to everybody else to start creating. It doesn't mean anything if Logan Paul starts on Facebook and gets 2 million followers. Of course, he's Logan Paul. It's going to take that new person to come over. It's like I listened to the guy who founded Musical.ly before TikTok talking about their strategy, and he like laid it out. He explained it like countries. Like if you're gonna like from Europe to North America, like back in the day, people didn't like, that's a dangerous trek to jump from somewhere you're comfortable in Europe to North America. But as soon as you start realizing that there's opportunity in North America, you can make money in North America, you can change the trajectory of your family in North America, people start making that trip because they realize there's opportunity. No one's gonna.
But isn't that the mindset of you have to pick one?
What do you mean have to pick one?
Channel? Not
channel, but I'm talking about like if, for example, your neighbor across the street, they just use Instagram like a regular person. They use TikTok like a regular person. Yeah. If they start posting on Facebook and they're trying to be a creator, and they could post on Instagram and TikTok too, but if they start posting on Facebook as a creator and they have success with no history of success as a creator, if they can do that, that's proof to everybody else who's trying to grow that Facebook is a place where you can grow your platform. Like the same way TikTok's where you've had your biggest growth, but it's also like there's trickle down to all the other platforms. You can still do that, but no one's making Facebook that main pillar. Yeah. Like it's not the forefront of anybody's, it might be, but like most people's strategy is not Facebook. Yeah. And so you need to prove that somebody new can come over and make Facebook the core pillar and grow off of it to attract everybody else. Yeah. I think that's going to be, I don't know if does that make sense? I feel like I'm kind of all over the place. So it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate. I'm curious to see your approach to Facebook. Is it just going to be taking the TikToks? I mean, I know we're 2 days into you.
At first. Why not, right? When you have 500 sitting there, just tell the team, hey, let's go. Just start posting. Why not? There's no downside. But I have seen on Shorts, it didn't really work. Like we had videos pop here and there, but consistently no. Pinterest, I feel like we were doing it wrong, to be honest, but didn't pop. Reels can't get anything to pop. So I think the just repurpose, at least for my content, for whatever reason, is not hitting. But to be honest, I haven't explored it enough. Like I haven't looked at it and been like, okay, what are other people doing? But I think for me, like a big shift I'm going to go into is making my personal brand my second biggest priority behind modern marketing. And so because my personal brand feeds modern marketing, and I have so much opportunities through my personal brand, and I love it. Like this is fun, you know what I mean? And so the next step for me is to really kind of do V2 of my personal brand, of like, what does it look on more channels? How do we systemize more channels?
Mm-hmm. And so does that mean, so if you're going to be focusing on, so if it's going to be modern marketing 1, your personal brand 2, cash and marketing 3, does that mean also finding additional ways to monetize off the personal brand, or is that still just feeding them like up into modern marketing? Yeah,
like I think additional ways to monetize isn't that complicated. Like I really struggle to want to offer a product through me. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I struggle with it. I think there's a bad taste in my mouth from seeing certain people offer certain products, and I just don't want to be in that category. But I think like the easiest way for me to monetize is get speaking. And I think virtual speaking is like amazing. Like show up, especially virtual speaking where like you can just Q&A it. That's what I told someone the other day. They asked me to speak, and I was like, listen, like I'm happy to give 10 minutes at the beginning about myself, but like you have to ask me questions, or the crowd has to ask me questions for 50 minutes after, because I don't want to spend hours prepping for this. Like that's not fun to me. And so I see like that becoming, and then the way I think is like, okay, if I want to do more speaking, how do I then craft my TikTok to make me more of a speaker, right? Like what, and that's fun for me to like kind of strategize around that. But yeah, it's something I know is kind of my next evolution, but I'm early in it.
And with the Q&A versus like this, you just giving a speech, like that can get repetitive with a speech, and it's not always like, it can be slightly contextual if you know the industry you're talking to,
yeah,
but it'll never be as contextual as someone asking you a direct question about a problem that they're having.
Sure.
And a lot of people in the audience, so it makes a better experience for everybody.
Yeah, in theory, it can be seen as lazy, but for me, it's how I, at the end of the day, just want to live my life. Straight up. Like, I just don't want to spend hours prepping for a talk. Like, that puts me to sleep. One of the things that suck energy. Whereas being on stage or on camera give energy. And so I'm comfortable saying no to opportunities if it's not like something that's going to give me energy.
And back to that giving and taking energy thing,
yeah.
Are you like, in terms of like, are you collecting data on that? Are you writing that down, like have a calendar on and like write down things like give and take energies, or just intuitive for you right now?
Yeah, like I haven't gotten to that level, but I will, I think. Like if I need to, I think that's like, it's like a layer more extreme than I'm currently looking at it. Like really like data, setting it all and looking for trends and shit. But I may get there.
You may get there.
Because have I told you about Rob Dyrdek, what he did? Exactly, right? Like that to me is total lunatic stuff, but it worked.
But everyone thinks you're crazy until it works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Remember when I started my TikTok? Remember my first video?
Yeah, fuck that guy, man.
100K in 30 days?
Yeah.
Like to see like what I started with and like the person I've become on that platform now, not from a number standpoint, but just like from the style of the video. It's so fascinating.
I'm just laughing in my head right now of you walking down these stairs in a suit, being like, fuck that guy. It was just like the most like in your face.
And no one will ever get it. Like, unless you were there from day one, like you just don't know what this means. Yeah. But it's one of the funniest. I had like a 7-layer plan to that. It was going to be amazing. But then we realized if you swear, you get shadow banned. And so we had to blow that strategy up.
That's another funny thing. That's something we talked about in the first podcast with shadow bans.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know anything about shadow bans. Like, you're like, I don't deal with them.
And I still don't care. Like, people hit my comments all the time. They're like, are you shadow banned? Are you shadow banned? I'm like, who cares? Like, what am I going to do? Like, call TikTok? Like, who cares? Just keep posting.
You had a quote in the podcast you did, like, just yesterday that came out.
Oh, let's do it.
I did listen to it.
What'd you think? I feel like I crushed
it was good.
that.
It was good.
And you know what's interesting? That was filmed April 14th, and it came out yesterday, July 28th, and I predicted the Instagram shift. Like, I was like, this is what's going to happen in the feed. This is how they're going to continue to change it. And if you look at Instagram in its current state, it's already happened.
That's interesting. I didn't even pick up on the fact that that was recorded. Like, you couldn't tell because you were so bang on. Like, that you could have recorded that 3 days ago. Like, if you, like, I would have believed you if you'd been like, yeah, we recorded that.
That's why I told Jamie, I was like, it's a shame that, like, and sure, we could, like, tell people it was, like, this was predicted on April 14th, but the podcast was actually uploaded yesterday, so there's no, like, proof. But, yeah.
But it was in that podcast you were talking about. You don't care about the algorithm. Like, everybody talks about the algorithm like it's this big scary thing that's gonna just ruin them and ruin their content. Yeah. And you're like, I don't care about the algorithm. I do it. I want to do it. Do what's best for me. And if the algorithm doesn't like it, so be it.
Because I want fans who want me. I don't want to get fans because I pander to an algorithm and then like I hate my day to day. Like, I don't want to talk about this, but the algorithm will like it. Like I said in that pod, I could just do trend alerts. I've watched people grow super fast in marketing that just point and say, this is the hot trend. But do you think I'm smart in marketing for doing that? Probably not. I want people to think I'm a thought leader. I want to get hired for speaking. I want to get hired to run your advertising. I want you to join my modern marketing course. So I'll take 3,000 views of depth because that'll make me a ton of money and make me a real community versus 100,000 that is just like quick passovers.
Yeah. It's not necessarily about how many people are watching, but who's watching. And being and knowing what you want to be known for. Because like you're talking about, like, you're cool getting 3,000 views, which for an account with 124K is not as what you think you should be getting.
No.
But I know I know you're not just saying this. I know you're genuinely comfortable with the fact you're not getting quote unquote as many views as you should be.
Well, think about, sorry to cut you off, but I've had a video do 2 million views, and off of that, I mean, it might have been 20,000 followers, right? So when you have a viral video that does that and gets that, you then be like, okay, like I have 120K, but 1/6 of that is off of one video that went viral. So like, okay, now I'm kind of really at 100K. And then like maybe like 5 other videos are like 50K of that. So I'm really only at 50K. And then you start to really like be honest with yourself about like how many core fans do I have? And so I understand it. You know what I mean? Like, and I see the business things on the back end that are coming from it, and that's what I want. I don't need the views.
It's because people now, they don't like, no, not a lot of people think that way. They just think, I need the attention, I need the views, but they don't stop and think, like, they just want to be known, but they don't stop and think what they want to be known for.
Yeah.
And that's what you've done really well. You know exactly what you want to be known for.
I was talking to someone yesterday or Tuesday that, super successful person. And they're like, I want to start my personal brand and I want to crush it. I know you're the guy to like advise me on it. And I was like, honestly, like, because everyone wants to do the same shit. They're like, I want to talk business. I want to talk mindset. I want to talk. And I'm like, that's nice. But like, everyone wants to just talk about everything and be Joe Rogan. You know what I mean? Like, please, before you start producing content, understand how you're going to, if you want to make money, you don't have to, but if you want to make money, understand what you're going to sell on the back end, and then understand what content is going to attract people that would buy that and make that content, right? So if you're a real estate expert as one of the things that you know, and you wrote a book about mindset, okay, you're going to sell the mindset book. Maybe do you do real estate group coaching? Do you have a real estate course people can take? Okay, if those are things that you have, you want to now think of creative ways to create content that are going to point to those, right? So you might not talk about your family, let's say, because you don't have anything that are for parents on the back end. And I think that's once again starting at the end. What is it going to point to, right? And I really told them to do that because I'm like, man, a lot of people they get their follows, they get their views, but then they hit a point where they're like, man, like I'm spending a lot of money, I'm getting a lot of attention, but nothing is coming back money-wise, right? And so if you start with that in mind, you don't have to rebuild. You don't have to then reevaluate and be like, oh shit, I need to do this, but now I have 100,000 followers, but they don't even care about what I'm going to do, and they're going to leave, and then the algorithm won't like that. And like please, from the start, just know what you want to do on the back end.
And the alternative to trying to rebuild it all as you're doing it is you have those 100,000, and now you're trying to make products that pander to that 100,000 that you don't care about.
Yeah. But that's even why I started Modern Marketing. I could have pushed Modern Marketing through Hayden Cashion, but I didn't want that to be my personal brand. Even though I had 100,000 and I started from zero with an 8-week span to sell people, or else the company dies. And we started from zero because I didn't want Modern Marketing to be me. I'm only the face of that company because of convenience, because we know I can go on camera and do a good job. In the future, you'll see me 5% of the content.
Mm. What about back to your 100,000 with your first account? Uh-huh. You said you were going to do 100,000 in 30 days. It took longer than that.
Yep.
Still an impressive amount of time to go from 0 to 100.
275 days. But
you were public on record. This is going to take me 30 days.
Yeah.
What's your comfort level with calling your shot so publicly and not making it?
And I would say this about somebody else, but my mind instantly said it's a genius move. And the reason it's a genius move is because there's no loss. There's no downside. If you do it, you get the applause, congrats. But if you don't do it, you get to storytell the story of adversity and struggling and overcoming challenges and failing. And people almost love you more because of that. I knew there was a high chance I failed, but I was like, I'm just going to tell the story of failure and how it didn't stop me, right? And so when you see life as storytelling, there's really no downside.
There's a quote. This one fucked me up when I listened to this last night. I didn't catch this when we did our podcast.
Yeah.
Like this is episode 100.
This gets me so fired up. What did I say?
And I listened back to it. It just hit me. I was like, literally when I listened to both of them yesterday on double speed, but it still took me like an hour and a half. And I was just shooting hoops for an hour and a half listening and like stopping to write down notes
cool.
as you say anything. But
it's your life, eh? As a podcast host?
Usually,
shoot hoops, double speed listen?
Usually it's FIFA. I'll be playing FIFA, but focusing on the audio. But no, you said talking about like this, we're more so talking about regret, because I know that's something that you are definitely against. And something we talked a lot about last time, so we don't have to go deep into it.
Yeah.
But you said you'll never know the alternative unless you absolutely lose everything. You'll think it was the right decision. And I was like, holy shit. Because I've never heard anybody who has done anything that gets to a place and goes, oh, but I really wish I did that other thing 6 years ago. Like, for the most part, it's like you hear people say, yeah, I had adversity and this didn't work.
It's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Exactly.
But it's because they know no different.
Mm-hmm. But it was just like, it was the framing of that like, you don't want the regret of not. Yeah, people regret what they don't do. People regret not doing something. You don't regret doing something for the most part.
100%.
Is there anything you regret though right now?
No, because I don't think anything's binary. I think a lot of people think this decision is make or break. So I'm going to go live in Miami at the first quarter of next year. And the reason I'm not worried about it is because if I don't like it, I can fly home 4 days later. Like, even though I just said I'm going to go for a quarter, I can fly home 4 days later. So there's no downside, right? Yeah, of course, you might lose a little bit of money, whatever. But in real life, it's not that big a decision. I just hop a flight back home and life's back to normal. And so I think people, the way I look at it is like, I have to do it because I know what living here's like. So if I don't experience what that is, that's regret. I have to experience it. I'm almost letting myself down if I don't try it, right? And so that's how I always see the world, is just like no decision is binary. Like, lots of people get divorced.
I want to talk more about the move to Miami.
Cool.
Because I talked to you, I'm trying to think how long ago this was, 3 months ago, 4 months ago? So it was like probably shortly after you got back from LA. And you were like, I don't want to move. You're very much into your routine.
Yeah.
What was the shift where now you're like, I have to experience this?
Yeah, Deepak called me out. He was like, it's a limiting belief. He's like, what you're saying is a limiting belief. You say you don't like travel, but he was basically saying you need to travel more before you're allowed to say that. And he was right. Honestly, like, I was making up an excuse for why I shouldn't try to do more stuff. And I think on top of that, Deepak's moved to the U.S., well, living in the U.S. kind of thing. Jamie's done the same thing. Sahil's done the same thing. And when they come back to Ottawa and I see them, they are radiating, is the word I use. They are just so inspired, so excited about life. And every time they come back to Ottawa, they all say, like, it just feels like the energy's sucked out of them while they're here, and they can't wait to get back out. Even Sahil was saying, he's like, man, I feel like I'm like in the locker room right now. Like, as soon as I get back to Dubai, I feel like I'm in the game, right? And Deepak he kept saying, he's like, man, Ottawa's where dreams go to die, is what he kept saying. And it hit me because I agree. You know what I mean? I look around and there's really nothing inspirational going on here. And I think I owe it to myself to go see what the other side's like.
I agree. I mean, I also just left.
You just left, yeah.
So, and loving where I'm living now in Toronto, right?
It.
And so it's cool. And it's also like, I like that you're giving yourself that opportunity. You know what I mean? And you're not like, 'cause I feel like a lot of people, they feel like they have to keep promises, even if they're subconscious promises that they made to their younger selves, and they don't let themselves grow out of that. Like, your needs are going to change, but younger you might have wanted one thing, so you still think you have to do that thing to please your younger self and who you used to be, instead of trying to please who you are now.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you've made this call.
And once again, it's almost the easiest call to make because, like, I can always just come back. Like, there's really, the only risk is if I didn't do it.
It's the safer bet.
Yeah, but to me, it's just like you don't have data. Like I said, I have enough data here. I know what this is like. Let me go try Miami, and maybe I'll get enough data that's like, oh, I do prefer Ottawa. I want to be with my friends. I want to be with my family. Maybe I will. But until I go get that data, I'm just like, I'm kind of living in a regret if I don't do it.
Mm-hmm. And it's being comfortable with going there and then realizing you like Ottawa. You know what I mean? Because like for a lot of people, it's like they have a picture of who they want to be in their head, and it's not who they are, and they try to force themselves into that picture of who they think they should be. At least doing things they don't want to do,
100%.
Moving cities if they don't want to.
I mean, I've never lived anywhere other than here for a prolonged period of time, so I owe it to myself to try.
What else do you owe it to yourself, like beyond just moving?
I think I owe it to myself to give myself this space to recreate myself right now. You know, a lot of people, you know, always tell me, they're like, man, you worked so hard, like you deserve a break, like, you know what I mean? And even yesterday on the call, I was just like, I was telling my client, I was like, you know, what do you think about me taking a real vacation? And they knew what I meant. I've never really been on vacation in like 5-6 years and like not thought about work the whole time, you know?
Could you?
Yeah. I think that's what I mean, is now allowing myself the space to reestablish myself.
What do you mean by reestablish yourself?
You know, setting maybe boundaries, maybe having, you know, certain balances, maybe doing certain practices. Like, this is what I mean is I'm going to evolve and learn over this next period, however long it takes. And that will be how I reestablish myself. And it may be something simple. It may be like, man, I just really need to go on a hardcore vacation every quarter. It could be as simple as that. It may be like, man, I really need to figure out my diet. It may be a multitude of, I need to meditate and have a therapist and do the diet and do vacation. Like, that's what I mean is like, I just need to allow myself the space to evolve. Because I think for so long, I've been so proud of who I am that like, I didn't want to change. And I think my body is now forcing me to change, right? Or just like ask myself questions.
Had your body not told you it was time to change, would you? Because no?
No, because I loved it. Yeah. I wish I could still keep going. I just don't have the energy. I'm exhausted. And that's why I couldn't pinpoint the problem. It was because it was just exhaustion. There was nothing actually a singular thing wrong. It was everything I was doing in my life. I was exhausted. I didn't even want to talk.
So how do you make sure you don't fall back to that then?
We'll figure that out.
So how does this conversation go? If we sit down again in 2 years from now, how do you think the conversation goes?
I'll tell you my story. I'll tell you if in 2 years it's fixed, I'll tell you how I fixed it. If in 2 years I'm 70% of the way, I'll tell you how I got to 70% of the way. Like, at the end of the day, I'm just going to tell you the story. I can't tell you what it's going to be like in 2 years because I don't know what it'll be like in 2 years. Maybe we'll be in Miami.
Maybe. Who knows?
Maybe we'll be in LA.
Maybe we'll be in Toronto.
Yeah.
How often do you look back on the whole journey?
I actually like don't have a great memory like that for stuff like that. So a lot of times, like when you were telling me about the podcast, I was like, oh, really? I said that. You know what I mean? So yeah, no, I don't look back. Because for me, like, it's just, it doesn't really matter. Like, I'm very not driven by goals, by singular goals. I very much just want to love my day-to-day. Right? And so for me to, like, look back on things, like, I don't really get excited on any particular thing to look back on. Like, if you ask me what I'm most proud of, I would actually say how we pulled off modern marketing in 8 weeks. That blew my mind. To the extent we did it and what we went through to do it, in the moment it didn't seem crazy. In hindsight, it was bananas.
When were those 2 months?
When? Yeah. Mid-March to mid-May. Yeah, and funny enough, right, from a burnout standpoint, somebody told me something really good. They're like, when you're in chaos, you're in fight or flight. But sometimes when the chaos subsides is when it all hits you. And I think that actually drained me to the core, but I didn't feel it till it was over.
That was going to be my question. Was modern marketing that 8-week sprint?
I think that much content, man, was insanity. Like 30 videos a week plus posting it. Like it destroyed me, right? And you got to realize this is like my side company.
That was my question. Was going to be, was that the tipping point? Because that timeline gets you very close to your birthday.
Yeah, because I remember after that I swore like I would never do that again from a production standpoint, unless it was like my full-time job. I just couldn't do that as a side thing. Like Sal was there, he'll tell you it was nuts though. Although we got so efficient, like by the last shoot, I think we shot 30 videos in 52 minutes.
I believe it.
Crazy.
I've never done that volume. My record was 21 in 14. Yeah. That was my record. But I'd believe it. Yeah. But so then how do these two things exist? 8 weeks to Modern Marketing is the proudest thing you've ever done.
Yeah.
You're never going to do that again.
Yeah. And like, it's what we accomplished in that 8 weeks. I couldn't imagine before I accomplished it, I couldn't, because to be honest, we really accomplished it in 5 weeks, because the first 3 weeks we struggled, and we made one switch, and we fixed the whole 9x the whole situation. And to me, I was like, man, like that made me feel like I got business, like and me and my partner, it's not just me, but we problem solved. And actually, like, it worked. And, like, it was make or break. And we didn't know what we were doing. Like, it was kind of crazy. And so that's actually what I'm most proud about. It just took a lot out of me. But the content wasn't the problem. If that makes sense. They're very separate to me. Like, producing the content and posting the content is not what I'm most proud of. We made a change in the product. And it was kind of genius the way we did it. And it worked like crazy. And like coming from my background, I've never thought much about product. Because in an agency, the product's kind of defined. Like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google ads. Like there's not much you have to really like figure out. Like it's already kind of the product. In Modern Marketing, we had our paintbrush. Like we could do anything we wanted. And so we were thinking marketing and sales. And we were doing such a good job, but it wasn't working. And then we were like, well, we looked at it and we were understanding on the sales front, people were having certain objections and they were right. And we couldn't combat them because they were right. And so what did we do? We took our one product and we created 4 products that actually combated the objection. And so now people would hit us with the same objections, but instead of trying to talk our way through it, we actually, oh, perfect. Well, this is the product for you then. Now what do they do? And so it worked, man. It was so cool to see because like intuitively I was like, man, I know this marketing is good. And I don't know sales, but my partner's a salesperson. I would be on the calls and I'd be like, I don't see what he's doing wrong. He's, in my opinion, I'm like, he's doing a great job. And so then we looked at the product and we kind of rolled the dice and was like, we think this is the issue. We have 5 weeks to pull this off now. And it was.
There's one thing I want to push back on that you said right at the beginning of that whole tangent.
Cool.
You said it was really 5 weeks. Yeah. But I think those first 3 weeks should be counted because
5 weeks of success.
5 weeks of success, but the whole thing was still 8 weeks. And I don't want you to think that just because something isn't working doesn't mean you're not putting the work in and it doesn't count.
Yeah. No, but what I'm proud of is that decision at week 3 to 4, like us really sitting down and not being like, hey, just market more, just sell more. It was like, nah, like there's something wrong here. And we both saw something that we'd never addressed before. And like I said, like these decisions were like time bound. Like if we test this decision and 2 weeks we find out it wasn't solved, now we have 3 weeks to figure this out. And I'm so like, I'll never forget that moment because I intuitively was like, this is so the answer. And Sam, my partner, will tell you, we were on a call and I built out a matrix in front of him of objection and product and started literally hand building every single product so that no matter what they said, boom, you insert it. And he watched me build it. And I was like, Isam, like my brain's just going right now. And I figured it out and we agreed to do it. And it was just like, it just gave me a lot of confidence that like, you know, this was something new for me. That's why it gave me a lot of confidence, was because like, I knew it, you know?
What was that moment where it clicked?
What do you mean?
Like when you start building that matrix, like what happened for you to see it and build that out?
So I started asking him, I'm like, okay, what's the problem here, right? And so for those who don't know, it's a 10-week intensive course, 18 hours a week, live sessions. You learn all these marketing skills, and then we set you up with interviews with companies, okay? So when we were pitching it, the two core objections were, I don't have the time. I don't have 18 hours a week, even though it's built outside of a 9-to-5 schedule. They're like, I don't have 18 hours a week. And the other thing was, I don't want to learn everything. So I don't want to do every module. I only want to learn this, this, and this. Well, originally we only had one product. And so it was like, they would say that, and it's like, okay, well, it is 18 hours and you do have to learn everything. So, there's only so much selling you can do. So what we then did was build 3 other products. That was like, you can just buy the recordings. You can just buy a la carte live sessions, and you can just buy singular recordings. So all the recordings, singular recordings, are a la carte live sessions. And so then I built a matrix of like saying they do have the time, they don't have the time. They do want to learn everything, they don't want to learn everything. So if they do have the time and do want to learn everything, then they get our top product. If they don't have the time but want to learn everything, they get all live recordings. If they don't have, want to learn everything but have the time, they get this. And boom, now all 4 products fit into, no matter what they said, it's slotted right in. And then we defined them on the call, and SM went to work, man. And this was really when I was starting to experience my burnout, right? Like I said, to May 15th. So I was kind of a couple weeks in. And luckily, I'd kind of done my part. All the videos were recorded. The marketing was crushing. Like we got 65,000 followers in that 8-week period. Like it was working. And I remember Sam started texting me, closed 1, closed 2, closed 1 today. This person bought this. And I'm like, no way. Like, not no way, but just like that worked. It
was validating to you as an operator.
It was just like, man, like it once again was like, me and Sam worked as a team, but like we really figured it out. I was just like, man, like you feel unstoppable when you have a moment like that, especially because we both agreed the marketing's working, the selling's working. Like he's doing a great job. And so it was just really cool to just kind of go intuitively and actually nail it in a make or break kind of moment.
The duality there is interesting. Of at that point in time, you're in a very tough place. Still are. But you also feel unstoppable at the same time.
Yeah. And once again, like I feel the exact same. I just don't have the energy. That's the hardest part, is like I want to run. I want to go fast. I want to build. But my brain can't even think right now. It's a heart and head thing. And so I'm still the same person. This is what I always reassure people when I talk to them, is like, nothing's changed to me. I just literally like have no energy.
I'm just trying to think of, because it's tough, right? Because I think everyone naturally in this situation, they want to give advice. Mm-hmm. And you gave the good advice at the beginning, is that like it's going to be an individual thing, that you have to figure this out on your own.
That's it.
And I think a lot of people don't even realize too, like post going through something like this, that like, well, what they did worked, so it's going to work for everybody. I think a lot of people don't realize that either, that like everyone has to go through this individually, and the solution itself is going to be individual. Like everyone's going to have a different solution to this.
100%. And somebody might figure it out in 3 months because they just happened to try the right things first. And other people might take years because it takes them longer to find the right things. And that's why, like, I can see the micro and the macro at the same time.
Is that scary that it might take longer than you think?
No, because I'm very patient with myself. I've always been. It's more just like I don't want to let people down. So that's kind of why I said earlier, like I'm just not going to take on things because I don't want to have to tell them I can't do it. And once again, it's hard because sometimes you go on a run of like a week of feeling amazing. You're like, I'm back. And then, because that's what happened. Yesterday I had a horrible day, but probably 10 days prior, amazing. I hung out with my brother, best friend, crushed work, feeling energized, and then right back. And so I think I can't be jumping the gun.
Well, I want to say that I appreciate you for, despite everything, that you still decided to do this with me today?
I needed to, because I want this on camera.
But even like on the back of a tough day, like I would have 100%, if I'd pulled up in the driveway and you'd been like, dude, I can't do it today, I would have been like, okay. You know what I mean?
Well, you're the best, that's why.
No, I'm not. But I appreciate, and I sent you the message too, like when I reached out to you, because I was like, I didn't want to bug you about it either. Because like obviously like it's important to me that we got to do this one together.
Yeah.
Like there's nobody else other than like Gary that I could see for like 200, and if that had happened, you would have been 199.
Yeah.
Like there was no way you weren't going to be here in these last couple episodes.
Yeah.
And so I sent you that message, but I told you too, like it was important to me that you were here, but it's more important to me that you were okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm just glad that we got to make this happen, and that you're willing to do this.
Of course. And like I wanted to do this podcast with you. Like this one, I'm not going to go on other podcasts and talk about this, but I wanted to do this with you because I knew like you know me well enough that like it would just be almost like we're just talking about it as friends as if we're having a phone call. But I knew I want this in the world because I do think when I fix it and when I evolve in years from now, I know people are going to come up to me and be like, dude, that podcast you did like helped. And that'll be something that someone says to me in 7 years. And like, that's why I'm pumped.
I'm glad. I'm going to ask you the last question that I ask everybody.
Not this again.
At the end of every interview.
You can do the same one?
I've done it every single podcast. I've asked this question.
What's something the world should know? Is that it or something?
No.
Okay.
So if you were to have for the last question, I like to flip the script a little bit. So instead of me asking the question, it's you asking the question, but it's not to me. Pretend you have a crystal ball. You can ask this crystal ball any question. You'll get the 100% honest answer. What is one question you want to know the answer to?
When will we do the next episode?
I like it. And there will be.
Yeah.
There will definitely be another one.
Oh, it has to be.
There has to be, and there will be.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you, man. Not just for today, but for everything. Like you were guest one. You interviewed me at 50, right after my 50th episode. You were guest 100. You interviewed me after my 100th episode. We did, I think it was probably like, if I remember correctly, between episode 21 and 22, we did the New York City pre-cap.
The best.
That
was a fun episode.
That was fun.
Like I love listening back to that because there's some nuances to it that I like totally forget. But we story told like on the day of, and like you'd be like, oh shit, that did happen. Like me telling the story of the Uber driver.
I don't even remember.
Remember the Uber driver picked us up from the airport and took us to the hood?
Oh, yeah. I was telling someone about that recently.
Me telling that story on the podcast with doing the voice and stuff brings me back to that moment, man. I was crying laughing.
That guy made my heart sink more than any other person in the world because we're driving through a questionable neighborhood. And like, it's okay. We're going to get to our Airbnb. It's all going to be good. We pull up. He goes, oh, you guys in the hood? And then takes off. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, good times.
Remember he goes, a lot of homicides here.
Yeah.
A lot of homicides.
I was like, this is great. I've never been outside the country.
What's the funniest moment?
Oh, man. That trip. And even just that, man. Like, you've been very supportive with me, like, throughout this whole thing. Like, I can even remember when I first moved downtown Ottawa, I was, like, 3 episodes in, and we met at a Starbucks on Elgin and Lisgar, I think. And we were, like, you were showing me, like, Vice News, how they covered our Instagram clips.
Right.
Like, from, like, very early on.
I was doing that research for CPAC.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And even just like being the first guest, I remember coming to you with like, I was like, yeah, you want to be on my podcast? And you're like, what's your podcast about? And I was like, I don't know, I haven't figured it out. You're like, we'll figure it out first.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then I kind of I had an idea, and then you were all game.
I mean, dude, it's so cool for me, right? Like we were just coworkers at OSEG, and you said you want to start a podcast interviewing people who have grown on social media, and I had a little bit of a following at that time, and I was like, okay, well, I'll be your first guest. But to see where you took it, because the whole original goal is like 15 episodes, we'll go to New York and we'll do that, right? But to see like where it's now taken your life, right? It's like such a good feeling for me to be like, man, like I'm so glad that I was the guy that got to be the first part of that journey, and then throughout that journey, and then now being able to be like the ending of that journey. Like I feel blessed, right? But there was no doubt in my mind that like you would be really good at that. And I'm just glad that you had the passion to keep it going and see it through. And now it's taken you to so many different places and know so many people, so many people in so many, different, areas. And it's kind of, I remember telling you, just like, I don't know how this podcast is going to change your life. Maybe you do become Joe Rogan through it. But if you don't, like, I always thought what would happen is you'd interview someone, and then the person you interviewed would then be the point that takes you to that next level. Like, hey, I want you to come be the VP of marketing at my company, and it's a startup that takes off. Like, I didn't know how, but I thought it'd be a guest. But I think it's just the kind of the ecosystem you created, the aura around yourself that you created, then allowed the right people to headhunt you and be like, we need you.
Well, you're still not technically wrong. Because this new opportunity, which I'll do like the full breakdown next week of everything that's going on, all the moving pieces, but like, it was a podcast guest.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, episode 95. Zach Honifer, who I mentioned earlier, was my 95th guest. And
I
he
didn't
called
know
me.
the guest.
And he was like, hey, like,
I called it.
You did. And it was even crazier. So like, you called it, but also Elliot I think we were going to interview him in New York, but didn't work out. But he's the guy who started Dunk. He's like one of Buster's good buddies. Because he came to Ottawa and did the LinkedIn talk that you went to that one time. But I interview him, and he's like, you need to get like a Complex or someone to host their show. And I was like, okay, I don't know how the fuck to do that, but you're not wrong. Yeah. He's like, also, I think you should interview my friend Zach Honifer. And he introduced me to Zach Honifer, who had a company that asked me to come host their show. Yeah. And so it's just like...
And you know what the crazy part is, too, is that this podcast created the system to create the reps to actually make you the person that person would want to hire and give the opportunity to. So not only did it connect you, but it educated and built you.
100%. I was thinking on that like today when I was driving over here, because I've been like taking time to stop and think about all the show, what it's been. And it's like everything of where I live, what I do, most of the people I know all comes back to the show. Yeah. I was 20 years old when I started it. Yeah. You were 22 when you were on that podcast.
Crazy.
It's like, it's wild.
Yeah.
Of just like, I'm wearing the same outfit.
And I think what's inspirational for you to tell people is like, you've done X amount of hours of this pod and you've gotten 50,000 downloads, which in your words is not a lot, but that didn't matter. It's, exponentially exploded your life in so many ways. And I think that is a great insight for people, that the downloads don't matter. It's the connection, it's the skills, it's the happiness. It's like moments like this too. Like, I feel like it's been the best thing that ever happened to you.
I think so. It's hard to argue against it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, sometimes I'm like, am I just crazy?
You are.
Oh, I am. I haven't stopped.
Yeah.
It's been 4 years.
Nice.
Every week, except for like when I moved downtown Ottawa, I was like between episode 3 and 4, but that was it. I have been consistent since episode 4. I was bi-weekly, like every 2 weeks until between 1 to 6, and then 7 to 8 was weekly, and I haven't missed. I've been every single week since then.
You deserve it, bro. You did it. You put in the reps.
Like I said, man, that was supposed to be a thank you to you for everything. Appreciate it. So, and I've been like keeping asking questions because like I think I just don't want this specific podcast itself with you right now to end. Yeah. But I think this is a good place to end it.
I agree.
And I just want to thank you again for everything, and I want to thank everybody for listening. Whether you've listened the entire way through or you only listen to bits and pieces, I really appreciate you for taking time to check this out. Even if this is your first episode or if this is your 200th episode, thank you so much for the support. If you want to do me a big favor, go and follow Hayden on Instagram, on TikTok. Everything will be linked in the show notes down below, including a link to register for Modern Marketing. Whether you're somebody who has the time and wants to learn everything, or you're somebody who doesn't have the time but wants to learn everything, there's a package there for you no matter what your needs are. So that'll be linked in the show notes down below. And if you'd like to follow me, you can find me everywhere on social media at The Jacob Kelly. Feel free to come and say hello. My DMs are always open. As always, today's podcast is powered by Surf. Thank you once again for listening. We'll talk soon.
Proud of you, bro. Love you.
Thank you. Love you too.